Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking with a very special autism dad. Mark Shaffer is here with us. And he was telling us about his son being diagnosed and about it taking him to a place of depression, which is not his normal, but that he was able to get to a place where he was filled with faith. And I really want you to tell us, lead us, Mark, because I know that there are people who are watching in this holiday season and they're still in the depression place. How did you get from point A to point B?
Well, first of all, it took time. I had to really, I had to grieve the loss of my son. I had to grieve the loss of something. And so I was very hurt. And there was a lot of questions. And one of the things that was so significant that I remember is the blame game, where I would blame my wife that it was because of something in her past, and she would blame me because there was something in my family line, and we went back and forth with that for probably like 6 or 7 months. Like, well, it wasn't because of me; it must have been because of you, and and that is just such a dead trail. That is, don't even go down that trail, because the reason your son or daughter is autistic is because your son or daughter is autistic. We don't have the answer for that, but what you do have is your same beautiful child. I remember going to see our doctor, and he said, look, this therapy will help your son, but know this, when you walk out of here, you have the same son. So he's not going to totally change. And so you have the child that you have. God has given you that child, and now you've just got to figure him out. And that's what I always say about my son, Justice, is he's my enigma. He's my big question mark. How do I figure him out? And that's one of those things that it's actually become kind of fun for me, but it wasn't at first. So you asked, how did I come out of it? It took time, and it took a little bit of hope. And it was interesting because at the time where we lived, we had some neighbors across the street whose son was diagnosed recently with autism. So they put us in touch with their friends, and their friends told us about a clinic back in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. It's called the Family Hope Center. And you know what? That bit of hope really helped. We were on a plane within the next few months, and we went out there. And that's when my wife, like I said, that's when she kind of crashed and hit her depression. But when I got out there, I was like, okay, we can do this, this, this. We can help him. Because my biggest question when my son was diagnosed is, what's he going to look like when he's a teenager?
Yeah.
And everyone said, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you have to know. There's other autistic kids. But, one of the best quotes is, when you've met an autistic kid, you've met one autistic kid. They're so different. And that's why certain therapies will work on some and certain won't on others. And I always like to say, we've gone the full gamut. A through F worked. They were awesome. But you know what? G through Y didn't work. And we spent a lot of money, but they didn't work. And I still haven't discovered what Z is. So that's why I always say it that way.
I love that. So let's talk about some of the things that worked for you guys. So what did you do that was helpful?
Well, the first thing we did was we found out about the CFGF diet, or GFCF, yeah, gluten-free, casein-free diet. And, some people were singing its praises and other people were saying that doesn't work. Well, we decided to give it a try. And we got some really good coaching on that. And we found that out through Dan, by the way. Defeat Autism Now is another organization that helped us greatly at the beginning. We found a Dan doctor, and we got some coaching on that. And my wife was so rigorous. I mean, we had 2 toasters in the house, so there wouldn't be any, what do you call it?
The cross-contamination, yeah.
Cross-contamination, yeah. We had a set of pans that we would cook in that were gluten, casein-free, and a set of pans that weren't. So we took it to the extreme. My wife, back then, things weren't labeled, and my wife would call the companies and say, is there any chance there's any gluten in this? And so the first thing we did was we took them off of dairy. And I remember being out front with the neighbor playing, and this was like maybe 3 or 4 days after. And he said, hey, Mark, did you put Justice on a new medication or something? I'm all, no. I go, why? And he said, well, he just seems clear. He seems really present. Not typical for him. And I go, you know what? All we did was take him off of milk.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, there really is something to this, because when you first hear about diet, you think, well, how can that have anything to do with his autism?
Right.
And we saw huge changes. So my wife decided, let's take him off of gluten. And when she did, he didn't eat for 2 days. He was like a opiate addict coming off of heroin.
Yeah.
His eyes were just black, is how she described him. And then after 2 days, that kid ate anything we put in front of him. And we put vegetables in front of him, he'd eat them. We put whatever. Before that, all he wanted was pizza, goldfish crackers, anything that had the gluten and the casein in it,
Yeah.
because he was getting that opiate high from it. And so that really helped him. So the GFCF diet, I've always said, was the best thing we ever did for him. But actually, I've kind of amended that, because the best thing we ever did was had a little brother. Because his little brother, Jordan, will not let him just walk away.
Yeah.
He's in his face. But the gluten-free, casein-free diet is the first therapy-driven thing that we did that was great for him.
And how much is the age difference between the boys?
5.5 years.
Okay. Because a lot of people, it's that thing about right about when their child is getting diagnosed, they're considering having another child, and many people back away from it and say, I don't know if this is going to be a great thing.
Yeah.
And yet I hear from so many parents who went ahead and had the second child that it's one of the best things that they did for their child. Talk about why that is.
We went through the same thing. It took me that long to talk my wife into having another child, because we were so, she was just terrified we'd have another autistic child. And we loved our son Justice, but, another one, that's so much work.
Yeah.
And we knew families that had a few.
Yeah.
And so she took all these precautions ahead of time, anything that had any trace of mercury in it, like her contact solution, she stopped using. Underarm antiperspirant, she went and found a healthier one. She went gluten-free, casein-free for a year before, she conceived. So she took all these precautions, and we don't know if any of those helped or not, to be honest, but it sure made her feel good about it. And when our son was born, he's typical and neurotypical, and, he had some speech delays and stuff too, but not on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And man, I'm telling you, he is the best thing that we ever did for my older son.
I love that. And for anybody who's listening to the prep that his wife did and thinking, oh, that might sound a little like, I don't know, we've featured many times here on the show Dr. David Berger. There is a study, it's called the P2I study, that talks specifically about can you reduce a mom's risk of having another child with autism through controlling environment, and they have found that you absolutely can.
Yeah.
The studies are very clear that doing just exactly the things that your wife was doing, and depending on, excuse me, what's going on in the mom's immune system and what's going on in their environment, there are other specific things they can do specific to the person that they can reduce greatly the risk of having another child with autism. So I think that what your wife did was ahead of her time, and
Yeah.
she was definitely onto something. So you mentioned the GFCF diet was really helpful to you guys. What else did you guys do, and your son, but what else was really useful for your son and the progress that he made?
Well, I've already mentioned the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I think I have that down as number 2 of what we did for him. We saw great improvements as his gut began to heal. So the GFCF diet, when he was eating gluten, his stomach was just torn up. He had a lot of yeast. So we did the hyperbaric chamber. And well, first we did a round with a medicine called diflucan to kill off the yeast. And man, when we did that, we had the worst yeast die-off that our doctor had ever seen. But that did great things for him. His stomach was just ripped to shreds. So the hyperbaric oxygen chamber helped it heal his stomach. That, with the new diet, we saw a lot of great things. After that, we did chelation. We tried a few different chelations. We tried the natural one, which was a ash. It was a volcanic ash that was rich in minerals that we would do. And what it does is it dries the child out, so it draws toxins out of their skin. And we saw mild results from that, but then we went to DMPS, and we did that. We did it transdermally, which means it's a cream that you rub on, and boy, it stunk. But we saw great results. In fact, the week after we started him on that. I think he was about 4.5. My wife took him to speech therapy, and when they got done with this, when they got done, they walked outside with the speech therapist, and my son Justice looked at his mother and said, "Mommy, I want to go down the curly slide." And his speech therapist is like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And we, Jenny just started singing the praises of the Chelation. I know some people have had bad experiences, but again, it goes back to each child responds differently.
But we
And
should say, Mark, that you did all of this under the care of a physician, correct?
yes, oh, absolutely,
Yeah, because these
absolutely.
are not
We've always
things for
had our
people to just do on
yeah,
their own. These are all
yeah.
things that have to be monitored
And
and
usually
child. Yeah.
when we would change physicians, they would try a new protocol, but we were just like, what are we not going to do for our son? So, some things, like I said, we threw a lot of money at some things that just didn't work. And it's unfortunate, but, looking back, I don't have any regrets, because of where my son is now. It all played a part.
Well, and let's talk about where he is now. And so he's 15 years old, correct?
He's 18.
18 years old, excuse me. I
Yep.
can't do my math. He's 18 years old. And what is his life like now?
Well, right now he is a senior in high school. We have him at a private school, so it's a little bit smaller school. He's doing great. He's got his full course load. He doesn't get any help at all in the classroom. He is just there by himself, and he's got some friends. He's got limited friends. I'm going to be honest. He's not playing any sports, although he's thinking about going out for golf next semester. And he loves his video games. He's a big Fortniter. Was a big, what's the other one called? What's the one there they build stuff?
Minecraft?
Yeah.
Yeah, Minecraft.
So he was really into that. And now he streams. He has his own YouTube channel. He's just amazing. He posts his own videos. So he's really doing great.
And what's his relationship like with his younger brother?
Oh, they fight like big brother, younger brother. It's
Like
one of
any
those things
kids
where,
would.
right. It's one of those things where, when they're fighting, you get on them and you're like, hey, you guys stop it. And then my wife and I look at each other and go, well, that's pretty typical. So that's good. Anytime
Yeah.
you see that, you're like, that's good.
And along the way, you and your wife got very involved in researching and knowing all these things, as did you. And along the way, you became advocates too. Talk about how that happened and did that help you?
So I gotta back you up just a second.
Sure.
Because Jenny was the one who did all the research.
Okay.
I
was trying to slip you in a little credit there, Mark.
I know, and I appreciate that. I did some, but I'm a people person. I talk.
Okay.
And so I'll go meet people and talk with them and see what works and find out information like that. But she's the one who spent the countless hours at night, and I know the moms out there listening know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We both had our own ways of figuring out our little question mark. And so how that transferred into being an advocate is so many doctors would refer us, say, well, you know what? We would go in to see our primary physician, who is this older gentleman, and he'd be like, you know what? I just had 3 more kids come in who are autistic. Can I give the moms your number? And we would always say yes. And we would go through the whole thing of this is what we did, because when we first walked in and actually saw this doctor, he's the one who said formally as a doctor, yes, your son is autistic. And he was like, here's a pamphlet. Sorry about that. Bye.
Yeah.
He had no one to refer us to. He said, you can go to Children's Hospital and, they can do some tests, but that was about it. And so we felt that void. And this was before, Autism Speaks was very big. This was before TACA was very big. Both of those organizations have great information now of first steps. What do you do?
Yeah.
But we were just kind of left to figure it out. And I felt my heart just went out to those parents. Like, your son is autistic, your daughter's autistic. Now what? And so that's where our hearts really just went, well, how can we help people? And it's tough because as you try to help people, some of them take your advice and some don't. Some just go, you know what, that's too hard. I'm not willing to do that. And you're just like, wow, we just have different mindsets, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I've always been whatever my son needs. Like I said, what would I not do for my own son?
Absolutely. And so you did get involved with Autism Speaks and started a good relationship with them, and you were also involved with Taka. You know, a lot of times I watch families and the progression they make, and at some point, families will choose to get involved with a group or an organization, and I watch what happens when they choose to do that, and how much more confidence they have, and how much richer their lives become. And I almost wish we could force people into joining a group, you know, say pick whichever group you want to join and be a part of it, but you're going to get something out of it. Do you feel like that being involved with those groups helped you guys?
Yes. Now, early on, we would go to some group things where it was just kind of families getting together, to talk, or, autism dads or stuff like that. And we found some really bitter people. And, you try and help them, but they would just turn negative. Now, what I've noticed with the bigger organizations, they kind of have it figured out now. So we started helping out first with Taka, just because we were working with a physician, or not a physician, they were a caregiver, when we started doing the Tomata system, and they referred us to Taka. And so we got involved with them, and they gave us so much good information. And we would go down to their family picnics every year in Orange County. And what we really liked about it was a sense of community. As you know, Shannon, and as our parents know, autism can be very lonely
Oh yeah.
because, 99% of the time you're at home with your child, or probably a little less than 99, but so much of it you're at home. And like this last weekend, I was out at Autism Speaks Walk Orange County, and I actually helped MC that event. And there was 8,000 people out there. And it was all about celebrating. It was all about having fun. And you feel this community of, wow, I'm not alone. Because 90% of the time I feel like I'm all alone.
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like, yes, people should get involved. Just knowing there's other people who feel your struggle, who are there with you, who are willing to give you advice and you can give them advice. That kind of back and forth is so important.
Yeah, I think it really adds to everybody's experience. Now, you brought up tomatas, so now you have to
hmm
explain to our audience what tomatas is and tell us, did it help your son?
So Tomatis really helped our son. And what it is it helped him to differentiate sounds. So when I always tell the story of, I did a wedding. I'm an ordained minister, so I do weddings. And I did a wedding for one of my clients. And we went to the wedding, and at the reception, my son Justice had both hands over his ears and he was under the table because he couldn't stand all the noise. And so we had to excuse ourselves early to go home. Well, when we started him in Tomatis, what it is they'll play like classical music through headphones like I'm wearing right now. And it'll be classical music, and then they'll throw in a sound, just an odd sound here or there. And it's nothing sharp, but it starts training their brain to focus on what's important. And so the Tomatis protocol really helped my son. Again, I've talked to parents that have tried Tomatis and it didn't help. But for my son, it really helped him to be able to organize sound so that he could block out things that were just background and he could focus on things that are being said. And we saw him that with an increase in magnesium that we added to his supplement regimen, really helped him to stop having to cover his ears because of sound.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of chelated magnesium in anybody's diet. I think it's one of the greatest overlooked supplements. But who was it that told you to go to Tomatis? Tomatis sent you to Taka, but who recommended Tomatis for you?
That would be one of my wife's best friends in the world. Oh, now you're going to get me emotional.
Uh,
We have a friend, and her name is Amina, and she is just this wonderful woman who is just a step ahead of us in the autism thing. She had a son. She had actually adopted her nephew who was autistic, and took him on. And then she and her husband had a son, and he turned out to be autistic as well.
wow.
And so she is my favorite Amina line is, "You've got to fight for your babies." She was just a fighter, and she gave my wife so much good information. And I believe it was Amina who told us about Tomatis. It was either that or one of the centers that we had down in Dublin. We went to Happy Talkers in Dublin. I think Charlene is still there to this day. Dublin, California is in Northern California. And it may have been Charlene that told us, but we met Amina through Charlene. So there you go.
Well, and we're running out of time here, Mark, but I know you've talked about how you view this in a different way. And there are people watching right now who are in that place of lack. And you know, because you have been there, where they feel like, ugh, I had this plan for my child and I had a plan for my life and it just went away. And they don't understand when a parent who's further down the road who can say, I look at this now as a gift. And it hurts for them to hear that, because they say, this is not a gift. Yeah. And I always struggle with how to explain to them, I felt that way too, but you're going to get to a place, it's going to take a while. How do you explain to them when you say that you look at this now as a gift? What can you say to them?
You know, I look at, so one of the other things I do at my church is I help out with high school ministry. I've been a youth group pastor before, and I've worked with a lot of high schoolers. And I look at my son now, and he's typical in a lot of ways, and he's not in a lot of ways. But some of the things that he's not typical in, I am so thankful that he's not typical in. Yeah. He doesn't need to have the latest, greatest everything. He doesn't, back talk me as much. We've gotten into some, some verbal things, but I've learned how to deal with him in a way of, when things escalate with him, I just come down lower and calming, and then he calms right down. Whereas I see parents with their teenagers, their neurotypical teenagers, and how they get into all these altercations, and their kids are off doing drugs and all this. I don't have any of those issues. What I have is a young man I love to spend time with, and I love to talk with.
Amen to that. Hey, we can't forget that one of the reasons why we asked you on the show was because you had written a song. Yeah. And we want to show just a little bit of the song, not all of it. Can we have your permission to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so what do you want to say to set it up before we show the video of that?
Oh, well, I don't know what part of the song you're going to play, and I don't care. But I wrote this song in one morning, and this was when I was coming out of my depression, and I was bawling that morning when I wrote this song. I've written a number of songs, not some huge number, maybe 10, but this one I wrote so quickly, and it's just straight from the heart, and I feel like every autistic parent or parent of an autistic child can relate to this.
Okay, and, so, and people can find the whole song on YouTube, but where do they need to look to find it?
The best way to find it is to search it by saying A Father's Autism Song. We're the top one that comes up when you type in A Father's Autism Song. And through this song, I say all the best therapies that I did. So it's a great recap for what we've talked about.
We're only going to play 45 seconds of it, and then we're going to come back, but I want you guys to get a taste of this and how talented this dad is. So Gabe, go ahead and show them this video.
It seems like only yesterday we were living so carelessly. What a beautiful baby. Oh, what a beautiful family. What does the future hold? Well, it's so bright and so clear. Nothing could be better. Oh, we've got nothing to fear. Baby, can you hear me? Why won't you look into my eyes? Tell me how you feel inside. Please don't run and hide. Then the bottom dropped out.
Well, we lost the sound, but you can already see how emotional. We want you to go, and the point is we want you to go and watch it on YouTube. We don't want the views from it here. We want you to give those views to Mark. But you can see that it's a very emotional song from a dad to his son, and it tells the story. The story unfolds. You may have already seen it, but it's worth watching again. So again, tell them what to search so they can find it, Mark.
You type in a father's autism song.
Okay, a father's autism song. We just think that your story is amazing, and we're so happy for you and for everything that you guys have been able to accomplish. And I'm so glad that you were able to come here and share this, because I know that there are some moms who are watching who their husbands have not, that are still in that depression phase. And I want them to see that you can be in that phase and end up where you are. That can still happen, and that it takes time. And I want for the dads to see how amazing it can be when they get involved, because honestly, when dads get involved, it's a really special thing. So we really want to thank you for everything that you do, Mark, and wish you guys the best of happy holidays.
Thanks. Can I share one last thing?
Yes, absolutely.
So something to look for on World Autism Day this year. I've been in talks with Autism Speaks, because my son Justice came up with the idea of lighting up Minecraft blue. So we're going to do a Lighted Up Blue event online that will stream, where people can buy skin packs, and the money goes to Autism Speaks, and it'll be a way of unifying our community online.
What a wonderful thing.
So
Congratulations.
that's not sealed yet, but we're starting the talks.
Let's
So,
put it out
hoping that
into the universe. I think that can and should happen. I think that's wonderful. I can't wait to see that. That'll look really cool. Well, congratulations to you and to your son on that. And again, thank you for everything that you do. Happy holidays.
You too. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Shannon.